Alaska is one of the most beautiful places on the planet, filled with so much wildlife, nature, and serenity on an unparalleled scale. It's the largest state in the US by a landslide, and yet is also one of the emptiest. Only around 700,000 people live up here, with about half of them settling around Anchorage, the state's biggest city. The vast majority of this place is uninhabited, and for good reason. Living in Alaska is hard. Food is expensive, the days are cold, and the nights even colder. When the sun sets below the horizon at summer's end, you'll be lucky if you manage to get a few hours of daylight in before night returns. It's known as the land of the midnight sun, but also, when winter comes, darkness envelops the land, and it's every man for himself. Far off to the west, and away from any other civilization, lies the little town of Nome. Up here, it's so isolated that no roads even come close to it. The only way in and out is by plane or boat. But even this tiny little town isn't safe from the plagues of winter. It's January 1925, and the community of around 1,400 people who've mostly come here for gold has come down with an alarming illness. The town's only doctor reveals that children have been showing symptoms of diphtheria, an infection that creates a toxin in the body that can often be fatal. It's also highly contagious, spreading from just a simple cough or sneeze. Immediately, the town goes into quarantine, doing their best to limit the spread. If the virus gets out, it could very easily wipe out most of western Alaska, including the many native peoples who reside there. Urgent telegrams are sent out to the US Public Health Service begging for a shipment of antitoxin. But the nearest stockpile was in Anchorage, over 1,000 miles away. Today, a simple plane ride or cargo ship could have handled the transportation. But this is 1925, and the Alaskan people have very few options. It came down to the railroad to carry the serum, taking it all the way up to the town of Nanena. From there, the only way to Nome was to brave the 674 miles of wilderness in sub-zero temperatures and under the shroud of the night. Only one choice remained, as word spread around the state, calling all available mushers to settle along the trail and relay the serum along. Dog mushing has been part of Alaskan history since days of old, being the most reliable method of transport for thousands of years. Now, these dogs were the only way they could save Nome. On January 27th, the train arrived at Nanena, where Wild Bill Shannon waited patiently with his team. The temperature outside was negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and he didn't receive the shipment until 9 p.m. But nonetheless, he set off with his team of Huskies, beginning the 674-mile trek of salvation. All through the night they ran, pushing through the fatigue and the frostbite. At 11 a.m. the next day, 52 miles in, he reached a roadhouse and handed the serum off to the next musher, Edgar Collins. As he marched, the story of the trek spread all across the nation. Edgar might have been the only person around for miles, but the whole country was invested in the race. On the 31st, Leonard Seppala approached the rendezvous point at a town called Unalakleet. To get here, he had to cross the Norden Sound, a dangerous ice sheet stretching for miles on end. Now, as he received the serum, he had to turn around and run right back the way he came. Going around would add a day to the journey, and an incoming storm made crossing even more perilous, as the ice could break up at any moment. But Seppala didn't want to waste any time, and trusting in his lead dog Togo, they headed out onto the ice. The darkness blinded him, and the bellowing winds made it impossible to listen for any disturbances in the ice. It was all up to Toga to stay the course. All through the evening they ran, reaching the other side of the frozen inlet at around 8 p.m. Having already marched 84 miles, the team stopped to eat and rest. Having been exhausted from the freezing cold. At 2 a.m., they were out again, climbing over hills and across vast plains. Seppala and the dogs ran and ran until their legs couldn't carry them anymore. And after an entire day of travel, they reached the town of Golovin, where the serum was passed to Charlie Olson. Just 78 miles to go. The winds were harsh, with the blizzard threatening to blow the team off course. As the serum was passed to Gunnar Kaysen, he was forced off the trail multiple times due to drifting snow. If it wasn't for the lead dogs picking up the scent of others who'd passed by before, they would have been hopelessly lost. But they pushed on, even plowing right past the rendezvous point, where Kaysen was to hand off the serum. They were going to make it, no matter what. At 5:30 a.m. on February 2nd, Kaysen and his team of dogs arrived on the streets of Nome. The serum was thawed and administered to the sick. Not a single vial had been broken. The people of Nome were saved thanks to the might and strength of these incredible dogs. Naturally, the story became a sensation, with Kaysen and his lead dog Balto becoming nationwide heroes. A statue, a silent film, and many such accolades were lauded to the man who finished the relay. Seppala and Togo also rightfully received credit for having overcome the hardest stretch of the trek. In Central Park, where Balto's statue remains, the inscription reads, "Dedicated to the indomitable spirit of the sled dogs that relayed antitoxin 600 miles over rough ice, across treacherous waters, through Arctic blizzards, from Nenana to the relief of stricken Nome in the winter of 1925. Beneath that inscription, 3 more words pay tribute to Balto, Togo, and all the rest. endurance, fidelity, intelligence. 100 years later, the spirit of the Serum Run lives on in Alaska's most cherished sporting event, humanity's last great race. Even as the need for dog sleds declined with the advent of the airplane, it was up to a select few to keep the tradition alive. Dorothy Page, chairman of the Wasilla Knik Centennial Committee, first conceived the idea of the race in 1967. With the support of Joe Reddington Sr., parts of the old trail were cleared off, and the first race was held that year as a two-heat, 56-mile trek between Knik and Big Lake. They only managed to run it twice before the idea fell out of public interest, but Reddington kept fighting, envisioning a race unlike any other, recreating the perilous trek to Nome. With the help of experienced mushers, and the army which helped clear out the trail, the first Iditarod race was held in 1973, with Dick Wilmarth being the first winner, taking nearly 3 weeks to reach the finish line. Reddington promoted the race for so long for 2 reasons: to save sled dog culture and to preserve the old trail from Seward to Nome. Even now, where communication and transportation are easier and more widespread than ever, the race lives on as a testament to those original mushers, and the determination needed to endure the bitter cold for days on end. It's attracted racers from all over the world to compete in the 1,000-mile run, with 96 teams in 2008 setting out to brave the tundra. After a ceremonial start in Anchorage, the race truly begins in Willow, where the route then winds and runs all along the Alaskan wilderness, through flat plains, frozen rivers, and winding mountains. Moose always proved to be a nuisance, and the forests from Finger Lake to Rainy Pass have been seen as one of the more difficult parts of the trek. Into the mountains, the temperature drops dramatically, the wind erases trail checkpoints, and visibility is further hampered. Like, we're talking wind chill of negative 130 degrees Fahrenheit through 50-mile-per-hour winds here. The trail down the Dalzell Gorge is regarded as the worst of it, a 1,000-foot decline over just 5 miles, making traction hard to maintain. Thankfully, there are plenty of checkpoints to resupply and repair broken gear. Upon reaching the ghost town of Ophir, the route splits depending on the year, one that takes the teams down through the many small towns originally missed by the trail, and one that more closely follows the original path, winding down along the Yukon River. Both routes converge at Kaltag, where they ride the homestretch down across the finish line into Nome, where crowds gather to welcome the racers no matter the time of day nor the position they arrived in. Of course, the winner receives a handsome reward, but above all else, the Iditarod celebrates those who have the perseverance and determination necessary to even attempt such a challenging race. Every single team deserves to be celebrated, and as such, the final musher to cross the finish line is given the red lantern, a symbol that everyone was able to find their way home. Of course, the race is incredibly taxing on both the musher and the dogs. These Alaskan Huskies are specifically bred to run, and go through rigorous training comparable to Olympic athletes to prepare for the race. Even with their fur coats, the dogs still have to wear sweaters and little booties to help keep warm. As for the musher, they have to carry only the bare essentials to ensure they don't slow the team down. A cooker, sleeping bag, axe, straw for the dogs to rest on, and plenty of food. are about the only things the mushers carry, and the bags stationed at each checkpoint help ensure they have more than enough to reach the end. But still, the risk of hypothermia and frostbite make getting to the end an incredibly difficult task. Above all else, the mushers have to stay up long nights to care for the dogs. As shown here, the green indicates time spent running, the red is when the dogs rested, and black is where the musher rested. As you can see, there is very little black on this chart, only about 8% of the total time. But no family has endured it better than the Seavey family, who've been part of the Iditarod since the beginning. Dan Seavey competed in the first race in 1973, finishing third. He ran for decades on end, up until his final race in 2012. His son, Mitch Seavey, started in 1982 and has ran every race since '95. He's won 3 times, the most impressive coming in 2017, where he became the oldest racer to win at age 57. That aforementioned chart is his 2014 run, where he finished in 8 days and 16 hours, a far cry from the original race which took 3 weeks. However, that run was still only good enough for 3rd place, where he was bested by his son, Dallas Seavey, by just a few hours. Dallas holds many records, including the youngest to ever compete in the race, in 2005, just days after his 18th birthday. In 2012, he became the youngest to win it, the first of his 6 titles, although the 2021 run took place on a shorter route due to preventing the spread of coronavirus. Nonetheless, that run remains the fastest time anyone's taken to complete the race, at 7 days and 14 hours. Although Mitch still holds the fastest time on the full route, at 8 days and 3 hours in 2017. But even with all the modern amenities of the race, the vast majority of it is still run on the cold, icy wilderness. Teams separate from each other pretty early on, and after only a few days, there's no one else around for miles on end. Days of shivering through the snow, pushing through the dark, and fighting for your life out there in the great alone. And these woods are far from empty, as Dan Seavey encountered 7 buffalo one time while crossing a river. They ran with the team for about a mile before disappearing into the snow. Moose are a fairly common sight early on, and can often pose a deadly threat to racers. In '85, Susan Butcher's team came across a pregnant moose, who went into a rampage, killing 2 dogs and injuring 6 more before another racer arrived and shot it. While no man has perished on the trail, there have been cases of dogs meeting their unfortunate end. 3 pups passed away during the 24 running, once again sparking massive debate over whether the race should even be held. Naturally, PETA has been at the forefront of the campaign against the Iditarod, citing cruel conditions and animal abuse among other reasons for why the race should be suspended. Following the 2017 running, reports of dogs being doped up on painkillers caused massive backlash over the race. Dallas, who's maintained that he's never given his dogs any substances, sat out the race for 3 years as the controversy boiled overhead. It's a debate that can go on forever, whether the dogs truly are happiest when running for miles on end, or whether they're the victim of callous human ambition. Although, frankly, given PETA's, interesting track record, I'm inclined to not be on their side. But nonetheless, the fact remains that the Iditarod is a highly dangerous, sometimes deadly race that pushes both man and animal to their limits. So, why would anyone even think about attempting such a feat? Who would willingly subject themselves to this hellish trek? Well, perhaps it's the same reason why people go out to distant lands, far away from any sort of civilization. There's a similar race out in the Sahara Desert called the Marathon of the Sands, a 160-mile trek along the dunes for days on end, with no dogs, of course. Only a crazy person would register for such an event. But when you're out there, among the sands, viewing the untainted earth with your own eyes, no sign of the troubles of daily life, there's a sense of peace that's unrivaled by anything else out there. Maybe it's a journey to find oneself, to discover value in a world that often looks and feels so gray. The thrill of the adventure, the challenge, the tribulations. It's the same reason why people choose to climb mountains, swim vast distances, push their very bodies to the limit. A spiritual awakening, a kindling of some deep desire to run free, or just a simple call to explore, to live and experience what no one has before. Even when you're out on the ice, with only the dogs to keep you company, the vast wilderness and immaculate beauty of Alaska is always there to cheer you along. That's where I want to be. To quote Dan Seavey in his book, The First Great Race, Alaska's 1973 Iditarod, however, what an opportunity for a once-in-a-lifetime adventure. A chance to truly go somewhere consequential, somewhere distant by dog team. What a thrill it would be to soak in the very essence of a trail known only vicariously through book and legend. How overpowering the thought to ride runners over a pioneer's boulevard, where august spirits of old-time dogmen sit and watch. Here was an occasion where all the noble qualities of an animal could be demonstrated to an ever-growing remote and mechanized world. Dare I hope that such an event would excite a renewed interest in the historic trail, that my adopted hometown, indeed all the communities along the way, would begin anew an appreciative relationship with that heritage treasure. Yes, I just had to do it. There could never be another first Iditarod race, and for that matter, the first could very well be the last. About a month ago, me and a buddy decided to hike up Flat Top Mountain during our trip to Anchorage. Yeah, I know, it's a super popular hike, but you're talking about two Florida boys, where the highest point of elevation in my hometown is about 30 feet. So this was kind of a big deal. We walked through the clouds, trudging and slipping through snow for the first time in my life, scrambling up rocks with no other people in sight. Out here, it was so serene, and above all else, so quiet. The cacophony of sounds from the city life all faded away into the afternoon breeze.
What is this?
The final stretch to the top involved a steep climb as we gripped onto rocks and pushed our own way forward. It was tiring, exhausting, and of course we worried that a bear would show up at any moment. But damn it, I flew 10 hours to get here, so I was reaching the top. After 2.5 hours, we reached the summit, and the view from up there made it all worth it. Seeing the mountains poke through the clouds, the valleys and rivers far below, soaking in this wonderful earth in all its glory. It's a moment I'll never forget, and for the racers of the Iditarod, it's one they've grown to cherish as they go out there year after year, risking their lives in the bitter cold, all for a taste of the great Alaskan spirit, with a company of dogs, of partners to love with. 1,000 miles of space and time spent with one of God's most marvelous creatures, the sled dog. Mile upon mile, days stacked up 20 high. They were always up, positive, uncomplaining, tough, adaptable, and indomitable. Each evolving in my eyes from a dumb draft animal to a valued trail partner, admired in truth, loved beyond words. And it's for that reason that the Iditarod will live on as the last great race on Earth, a testament to the unwavering determination of man and beast. A bond between dogs and mushers, a glimpse into the last frontier of this great Earth. I do not remember much about that final moment before my great adventure, my personal odyssey, began. What I do recall was a feeling of a most calm serenity enveloping me, an at peace well-being filtering into my very core. All was done. All was right with the world. All was going to be just fine.
This is terrible.
Get
But
up,
also
show us the
cool.
snow angel.
You can't see shit.
No, we can.
Yeah?
Yeah.